So last year, despite all those broader market narratives claiming that electric vehicle adoption was hitting this massive wall, the U.S. quietly built the equivalent of, well, an entirely new interstate fueling system.
Yeah, it really flew under the radar for a lot of people.
Right. They deployed like 18,000 new fast chargers in a single year. But as we'll find out today, pouring the concrete and planting the metal is really only half the battle.
Oh, absolutely. Keeping those chargers turned on and, connected to a stable grid, that is a whole different war.
Exactly. So welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to basically give you a shortcut to understanding the hidden reality of EV charging infrastructure in 2026.
And we are looking at a stack of incredibly insightful sources today.
We really are. We've got an extensive industry data report from Perrin, an academic reliability study from the San Francisco Bay Area, state government press releases, defense technology showcases, and even real-world fleet management guides from the UK.
Yeah, we're tracking the underlying mechanics of this whole transition, from the data proving this massive deployment boom to the physical reasons you might still get stranded at a broken station.
Right, all the way to how the military is literally using towable microgrids to survive cyber attacks. Okay, let's unpack this. Because reshaping the global energy grid while millions of people, actively rely on it every day, it's just a monumental task.
It really is. The landscape is shifting from a hardware problem to this systemic grid-level puzzle. If you want to understand the future of global energy distribution, you really have to look closely at the plug.
So let's start with the physical footprint today to kind of establish our baseline of where the industry stands. Because the scale of the 2025 boom was huge. The Perrin report we reviewed tracks 141 million individual charging sessions last year.
Which is staggering.
It is. And that 18,000 new DC fast charging ports figure, that represents a 30% year-over-year increase. It completely defies the whole slowdown narrative that was dominating the news cycle.
Well, the utilization metric is what makes that massive growth actually sustainable. Nationwide, the utilization rate for these chargers is holding remarkably stable at right around 16.4%.
Wait, so if we are building all these new ports at breakneck speed, are they actually getting used, or are we just building expensive ghost towns? I mean, 16.4% utilization might sound a bit low to a layperson.
Right, I get why you'd think that, but in infrastructure terms, that 16.4% means demand is perfectly matching the new supply.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's queuing theory in action. You need a significant amount of idle capacity so drivers aren't waiting an hour just to plug in. If utilization creeps up to like 30 or 40%, you start seeing actual physical traffic jams at the stations.
That makes total sense.
And fast chargers pull mass amounts of instant grid power, so a constant 100% utilization would also just completely overwhelm local substations.
Oh.
And the way developers are building this capacity has shifted a lot to manage that load. So as of April 2026, the U.S. hit over 71,400 public DC fast charging ports. Yeah. And Tesla remains the absolute juggernaut here. They hold 51.6% of the market with nearly 37,000 stalls. Their strategy leans entirely into megastations, averaging over 14 ports per location.
They essentially build modern highway oases with massive dedicated power banks.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, the non-Tesla networks, they historically built these fragmented, 2 or 3 port setups tucked away in random grocery store parking lots.
Yeah, the old way of doing it.
Right. But they are finally adapting. The data shows them shifting heavily toward 250-plus kilowatt ultra-fast chargers and pushing their average up to 4.5 ports per station.
They're realizing that slow, isolated chargers simply don't serve the modern road trip.
Yeah, they don't.
And we are seeing a parallel, though honestly much more aggressive, evolution overseas. A 2026 fleet management guide from Wright Fuel Card out of the UK outlines an intensely forced transition.
Yeah, let's talk about the UK.
So the UK has over 87,000 public charge devices now, but commercial fleets are being forced to adapt purely because of their strict 2026 zero-emission vehicle mandate.
Right. The ZEV mandate over there requires 33% of new cars and 24% of new vans to be zero emission this year alone.
Yeah, and the penalties for missing those marks are severe. Manufacturers face up to 18,000 pounds per non-compliant van.
Wow. That's a massive financial hit.
It is, which creates this immediate cascade effect for commercial operators. Giant telecommunications companies like Vodafone UK, they are officially targeting a 100% battery electric fleet by the end of this year.
Just to keep up.
Exactly. And when a commercial fleet of that size pivots, the infrastructure has to support a really high-throughput, predictable charging cadence. They rely heavily on depot charging overnight, but out in the field, their technicians need ultra-fast public chargers to maximize their working hours.
But all of that scale brings us to the friction point, right? Because having a plug doesn't matter if it's broken.
Oh, absolutely.
From the quantity of chargers, we really need to transition to the quality of the actual charging experience. We looked at a really rigorous academic study from OSTI that physically tested 655 open public DC fast chargers across 9 counties in the San Francisco Bay Area.
And what's fascinating here is the massive disconnect between corporate claims and ground truth.
Yeah.
EV service providers consistently boast about having, 95 to 98% network uptime. But when researchers physically tested those 655 chargers, they found only 73.3% were actually functional.
So over a quarter of the network just straight up failed.
Exactly.
If you went to a traditional gas station and 1 out of every 4 pumps just swallowed your credit card and didn't give you gas, there would be riots.
Oh, people would lose their minds. And the definition of functional wasn't even a high bar here. It just meant successfully initiating and holding a charge for 2 minutes.
Wow, just 2 minutes.
Yeah. The specific failures causing that 26.7% failure rate were almost exclusively systemic blank screens, payment system crashes, and connection errors. It highlights how complex the software handshake is.
Right, you aren't just sending raw electricity like a garden hose.
Exactly. The vehicle and the dispenser have to authenticate network protocols, check billing systems, and regulate thermal limits in milliseconds. If one data packet drops in that exchange, the entire session fails.
It is a stark contrast to a traditional gas pump, which just relies on simple mechanical flow.
Yeah.
But beyond the software, there are the physical ergonomics. The study noted a very specific and, frankly, frustrating design flaw. 3.2% of the tested cables, specifically at Electrify America stations, were physically too short to reach the charge port on the Chevy Bolt the researchers were driving.
That sounds like such an easily avoidable design flaw on the surface. But there is an actual underlying mechanical reason for it.
Which is,
well, these 350 kilowatt fast chargers are pushing immense amounts of electrical current. To push that much current without melting the casing, the cables require internal liquid cooling lines.
so it's about thermal management.
Entirely.
Uh-huh.
Pumping coolant through the cable makes it incredibly heavy, thick, and expensive to manufacture. So network operators keep the cables as short as possible to manage the weight for the user and the cost for the business.
But because automakers haven't standardized where the charge port goes on the vehicle, like some are on the front left fender, some are on the rear right bumper, a short, rigid cable frequently leads to a physical mismatch.
Right, you pull up and you literally cannot stretch the cord to the vehicle. It's a prime example of an industry maturing in silos.
It really is. But when you do successfully navigate the software handshakes and those heavy cables, the pricing landscape is actually stabilizing, right?
Yeah.
The Perrin report shows the national average hovering between 45 and 53 cents per kilowatt hour.
Although geography plays a massive role in that math. When chargers do work, prices are stable on average, but supply-constrained states or isolated grids pay a premium.
Right.
Like New Jersey is averaging 63 cents, and Hawaii is way up to 86 cents per kilowatt hour. It directly reflects the elevated costs of generation and transmission in those specific utility markets.
But we are starting to see traditional retail muscle push those prices down in a lot of places. I was reading a Reddit thread by a user named Statistician, which 147.
Oh, yeah.
They were detailing the new partnership between the Iona Charging Network and Circle K. They're rolling out chargers to 350 sites, and users are praising them because the prices there are holding steady at around 39 cents per kilowatt hour.
Because big retail brands view charging as a loss leader. They want to get you inside to buy coffee and snacks, so they have an economic incentive to keep the electricity cheap.
Right, but, fixing these reliability issues and scaling out that cheap retail network requires significant capital investment, which leads directly to the current regulatory roadblock that's threatening future buildouts.
Yeah, the federal pipeline is hitting a sudden brick wall.
And we need to pause here for a second. The sources we are discussing next contain some politically charged actions involving both Democratic state leaders and the Republican Trump administration. We want to make it absolutely clear to you, the listener, that we are not taking sides or endorsing any viewpoints here.
Right, absolutely not.
We are strictly and impartially reporting the facts as laid out in our source material, just so you understand the landscape of this industry.
Exactly. So to understand the friction, we have to look at the Federal Highway Administration's proposed rulemaking regarding the Buy America waiver.
Okay.
Historically, for an EV charger to qualify for federal funds, It needed final assembly in the U.S., and at least 55% of its component costs had to be domestic. The current administration is proposing to elevate that domestic content requirement to a strict 100%.
So wait, what does this all mean? Isn't manufacturing things domestically a standard infrastructure goal?
Well, at first glance, yes. But the issue is that EV chargers aren't just made of basic steel and concrete. There's an alert from the Electrification Coalition and a massive lawsuit spearheaded by Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown alongside 18 other states. They argue this rule would effectively make a $5 billion federal EV charger fund entirely unusable.
Because no EV charger currently on the U.S. market has 100% domestically sourced components, right?
Exactly. The sophisticated microchips might come from Taiwan, the specialized cooling pumps from Germany. Yeah. So mandating 100% domestic parts threatens to completely freeze federal deployment, like the NEVI program, until a global supply chain can magically localize.
And reshoring the production of advanced semiconductors and, specialized components requires building entirely new factories, securing environmental permits. It takes years.
It is not a supply chain you can pivot in a single fiscal quarter. So state transportation departments are legally barred from purchasing the globally sourced hardware required to actually get the job done.
Which naturally accelerates innovation outside of the traditional grid. If expanding the permanent grid is bogged down by political rules, permitting, and slow utility connections, heavy-duty users are finding ways to bypass the grid entirely.
Yeah, if you can't build a station, bring the station to the vehicle.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We are seeing a massive pivot toward mobile, off-grid power solutions. Like, we saw a perfect example of this from a company called Exos.
Oh, the Charger Hub.
Yes. They recently brought their Charger Hub to a technology showcase run by the U.S. Air Force Global Strike Command. It's essentially a massive towable power bank. You hook it to a truck, drop it at a depot, and it requires no utility upgrades, no trenching, and no permits.
And this isn't just theory. Exos just secured a $3 million order for 12 of these hubs from a leading autonomous fleet operator.
That makes total sense. Autonomous vehicles earn their ROI by maximizing uptime. They can't sit idle for 18 months waiting for a city permit to upgrade an electrical panel.
Exactly. Mobile energy storage gives them instant capacity. But the military applications take this logic to a much higher extreme. National Defense Magazine reported on a company called Critical Loop.
Oh, I read about this.
Yeah, they are proposing 100-megawatt deployable microgrids for the military.
100 megawatts. That's an incredible amount of power.
It's massive. And they can be flown in on a C-17 cargo plane and set up in hours to power an entire military installation.
Wow.
It provides vital cyber resilience, because if the main civilian electrical grid is attacked by an adversary, the base just disconnects and runs on the microgrid.
So if an adversary hacks the regional utility provider, the base's radar arrays, communications, and EV fleets remain completely operational.
Right, it physically decouples the base from the civilian infrastructure.
So we've talked about using massive batteries to bypass the grid entirely, but what if we use the millions of EV batteries to actively support and become the grid?
This raises an important question about bidirectional charging. The flow of power doesn't have to be a one-way street anymore.
Right. And the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, or MASCE, they have this Vehicle to Everything, or V2X program. They are providing bidirectional chargers at absolutely no cost to 5 school districts, including Acton-Boxborough and Boston and several municipalities.
The math on this is what's really brilliant. Normally, a charger just pushes power into the battery, but a bidirectional charger has advanced inverters that can feed that stored energy back into the local power lines safely.
And applying this to school buses is genius. They hold massive amounts of energy, and their schedules are so predictable, they sit parked during the entire middle of the day and then again all evening.
Right, which perfectly overlaps with peak energy demand. This program in Massachusetts is expected to deliver over 1 megawatt of power back to the grid during peak demand events.
Yay, 1 megawatt!
Yes, that is enough to offset the electricity use of 300 average homes for an hour.
So instead of the EV fleet being a massive drain on the local power system, a fleet of parked electric school buses essentially becomes a decentralized virtual power plant.
Exactly. It's a holy grail for lowering overall energy costs and preventing localized blackouts during heat waves. Utilities don't have to turn on expensive, dirty peaker plants. They just tap into the school buses.
That fundamentally changes the economic proposition of the vehicle. It's incredible. Well, let's briefly recap the journey we just took through these sources. We went from a booming 2025 with 18,000 new ports through the daily frustrations of broken screens and short cables, right?
Yeah, we navigated the political tug of war over 100% domestic parts.
And then all the way to mobile military microgrids and school buses that literally power neighborhoods.
It's a lot to take in.
Oh.
But the reason this matters to you, the listener, is because whether you drive an EV, energy delivery fleet, or honestly just want your home's lights to stay on during a heat wave, this massive infrastructure evolution is rewriting how the world manages and distributes energy.
It really is. Which leaves me with a final thought for you to mull over. If millions of EVs eventually become a decentralized mobile power plant through bidirectional charging, will we one day stop thinking of them as cars and start treating them as mobile nodes in a global energy internet that just happen to have wheels